you need to ask God for forgiveness. Or, wow, like, why am I not worthy of having like a father? That was a big one for
Yeah.
years and years in my subconscious. That was a huge one, was I'm
Yeah.
not worthy. And yeah, the message for me, like to really sing from the mountaintops, is you are so worthy and inherently worthy of God's love. You are love, you came from love, and that's where you will return.
There's a lot of mystics on the internet. Shout out and much love, you crazy fools, that could use dusting off a textbook or two warmly, without judgment. And secondarily, there are certainly a lot of scholars in academia who would be well served by eating a mushroom. So I'm trying to bridge those two worlds. I'm Bob Peck, and this is Karmic Relief.
My background is in documentary film and comparative religion. I wrote a book called Original Sin is a Lie: How Spirituality Defies Dogma and Reveals Our True Self.
It's an interview show where I talk to spiritual teachers, activists, scholars, people that live within these traditions and also appreciate the overlap. What happens when you start to get activated internally, that makes you activated in a compassionate way in the world. I'm thrilled to be talking to fantastic, inspiring human beings. I have to do much less work, which is nice, because I'm just asking them questions about their story. It's a life hack.
Hi.
I hope you'll enjoy these explorations, these really excavations. In the ones I've filmed so far, they've all been really beautiful and deep and lighthearted. So please enjoy Karmic Relief. I'm Bob Peck. I wrote Original Sin is a Lie, and now I'm asking a bunch of questions to intelligent, compassionate humans.
Kayla Marie's story is extraordinary. She's a trauma-informed somatic coaching counselor whose work is influenced immensely by her childhood growing up Mennonite. Mennonites are an extremely antiquated, fundamentalist Christian cult that perpetuates chauvinism, indoctrination, and control. There are moments of beauty in the faith, but ultimately the controlling egos subjugate their community and their women. Kayla was in Handmaid's Tale in real life, and sadly, the end of her Act 1 is very dark. But she also has bloomed incredibly after the darkness, and it is such a thrill to point to her, her work, and her story as a shining example of rising from the ashes. Hope you enjoy.
I'm honored to
So,
be here. Thanks so
well,
much.
well, it's a thrill. Your story is fantastic,
Thank
and
you.
it was, for me, we were messaging, a couple years ago now, I think, kind of
Yeah,
closer to when my
yeah.
book came out, and then you were like, "Yeah, this is like more of my story," and then I listened to it, and I was like, "This is an HBO documentary. Um, like this is riveting."
Yeah.
And I think what's so compelling about it is that you're not like in some terrible place. In fact, it's the opposite. You're actually in a beautiful place now. And
Yeah.
I really
Yeah.
want to emphasize that people who come from fundamentalist religious upbringing that's very institutional and rigid, and in your case, much worse, um,
Abusive. Yeah.
can actually transcend that. So, as a phoenix from the ashes, let's talk about your story. We can have tangential philosophical asides, but the show's called Karmic Relief. It's about mystic philosophy, spiritual, philosophy. Eastern spirituality certainly influences me. Um, and
Yeah.
I'm the author of Original Sin is a Lie. And so you and I both have challenges with the Christian uh, rigidity, really. That's kind of the
Mhm.
objective way that I put
Mhm.
it, right? Is like it's I don't want to be too condemnatory because there are good institutional Christians, but boy, are there some crazy ones.
Right, right. Well, something that I know you and I talked about a couple years ago after I read your book
Mm-hmm.
was I was bringing up the pre-trans fallacy idea of like there's all these amazing truths that you find, whether it's in like an actual religion or just a spiritual community. And but when those truths aren't actually fully transcended, it actually can cause a lot of harm. So yeah, that's big
That's
fan.
interesting. Is that Wilber?
Yeah, that's Wilber. Super dense. I wouldn't recommend it to everybody because it's like, what? You know?
I know. I've read this
But
stuff for like 15 years, and I read him at like, you know, a page every 20 minutes. Like he's
yeah, yes.
a genius. And but he's on to something. And like, what is it? Spiral dynamics, integral theory,
Mhm.
spiral dynamics.
Yeah,
It's like an integration of spirituality, philosophy, sociology, psychology, all these amazing things. And he's like,
yeah, it's
he
good
tried to
stuff.
simplify it.
Yeah.
There's
That's
colors.
basically that's my simplified version of what he talked about with that. It's like I'm not a scientist. I'm not a spiritual scholar necessarily. So it's just that's the base of what I funneled it into is like there are so many truths, but when you're walking with that truth when it before it's actually transcended fully, which means it's full of all of the truth of what that actually means. It's in your heart, like you're experiencing it. It's just a bunch of noise, you know,
Mm. And that's a
and
good
shame.
segue
Yeah.
into where it all begins for you
Yeah.
in unembodied, non-integrated spiritual religion. When I have referenced your sorority people because it's that profound. And to my understanding, you're Mennonite.
Yeah. So we joined the Mennonite church when I was 6. Before that, my family, neither my mom or my dad grew up in the Mennonite church.
Mm.
They didn't come from religious households at all. And essentially, my dad was looking for like the most extreme thing he could find. So he was a born again Christian when I think I was like 4 years old. Um, Before that, steeped in sin, as they would call, like going to strip clubs. And my mom had an affair, and like we were
Mm.
super poor. There was a lot of poverty, lots of alcohol. And then he was really,
Pendulum swing.
yeah, right, exactly. Yeah. So we were a part of a lot of different churches when we were trying to find the way. So we went to Baptist, Pentecostal, I mean, everything,
Mm.
Lutheran, like every single church you could think of, we went to it. We would actually travel to different states to go to different churches. And
Wow.
and my dad was really passionate about music, and so he would have us perform on stage at all these different churches. Uh, and we would go out handing out tracts and like trying to convert people on the street. We would take homeless people off the street into our house. I mean, we were like a full on like missionary, rogue missionary family. And then when I was 6, he came across these really strange looking people he had never seen before. And they invited him to this big church that was in a school auditorium. And we showed up, and it was just like the most extreme thing he had ever found. And so, yeah, and then we joined and we were part of that community. We actually were a part of building that community. We were like one of 5 families, I think,
What
that had all
what
moved
state
from,
is this? Pacific Northwest?
this is Washington State.
Yeah.
Yeah, the community's in Rochester.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, we were part of
Not
that.
Seattle, Washington.
Yeah,
Crazy
yeah,
Handmaid's Tale, Washington.
that's right. I've
Yeah.
actually never watched Handmaid's Tale because I've been told by many people
That
don't watch
it's too
it. They're
triggering
like,
for you.
exactly. They're like, Caleb, just maybe don't do that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because you guys wore that kind of stuff. I mean, you
we did.
wore
Yeah.
kind of Handmaid's Tale or like M. Night Shyamalan, The Village old school bonnets and dresses, and you made the clothes.
Made our own clothing. We were homeschooled when we first joined the Mennonite church, and then we ended up going to the school, which was in a barn, had 10 kids. And we weren't really taught the normal things you would learn in school. History, weren't really taught history. Weren't really taught any evolution,
They
not
bury the
percent,
dinosaur bones, so
like,
let's skip that.
yeah. So I learned music theory. They were amazing singers. They were really incredible. If you ever get a
Hmm.
chance to go to a Mennonite church, highly recommend it because it's just like the most beautiful chorus of singing that you'll ever hear. But yeah, so I was
Does the
inundated with that.
subjugation come out in the melody? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Anyway, it
Even
was
they're God's children, you know? I mean, that's
absolute, yeah, absolutely. It all plays a role, right? And there's beautiful, beautiful Mennonites that I still like hold so close
hmm,
in my heart, and I can't wait to see them when the time is right. Girls that I grew up with, and
but it hasn't happened yet.
I haven't seen them. No, I was going to. I might go. I'm going to go back to Washington this month. I might go visit when I'm there. It's
Wow.
been 20 something years.
That's what I was gonna say. Yeah, it's like,
Yeah,
well,
22
now you're
years.
going with armor of awakening and self-love, and you're
Right.
going with a different, it's the
Yeah.
new you that's going back in there. It's not the old you.
Right. Before, I think that I would have had so much fear and been very triggered by seeing specific people there and just not wanted to step foot over there. But now I definitely just feel love for all of them. So yeah, I'm excited to go see them when the time's right. But yeah, so we were in that. Like you said, super strict, fundamentalist. They really they just pounded in like with every word you speak, with everything you do, have God at the beginning and end. I remember having conversations as like a 10-year-old with other girls, like, oh, I'm so grateful for this beautiful day. And, God willing, we will have this really a lot of success. And some people will come to the church. And I don't even remember exactly what it was, but it was always like God was in everything. And that's the way that you had to speak. That's the way that you lived your life,
Well,
which is
let's
beautiful.
I was gonna say, let's unpack that for a minute, because
Yeah.
the mystics are not that different in terms
Right.
of seeing God and everything. And they have this sense that we're all, every exchange is divine, and, every being is a fractal of the infinite. And there's this spiritual mystery to everything. Whereas I think that some of the red flag words that came up to me while you were explaining this was 10 years old,
Yeah.
and had to.
Right.
And so the forcing of this to children, um, is not what the mystics do.
That's right.
That's
That's
a
right.
distinction.
Yeah. And another distinction would be just the amount of fear that was fed into us
Mm-hmm.
every single. I mean, we had church Wednesdays, Sundays, sometimes a third day. So we were in church all the time. We had devotions every morning. Um, and there was always this really big focus on the world and the worldly people and the people of the world. And it was so strong. I remember one time, like some guests came and they were wearing white shoes and they walked in and we were all like, oh boy, white shoes, white shoes.
Wow.
I mean, it was that deeply
It's
like
unreal.
embedded in us of like the others and be afraid and don't, yeah, don't be of the world at all. And
And this, what year is this?
so this was when I was 6 and I'm 36 now. So
I'm
30 years ago.
36,
I know, what up?
88.
Yeah, exactly.
So 1994,
Yeah, 1994.
Bill Clinton,
Bill Clinton, exactly.
Power Rangers,
9/11, 9/11 happened.
9/11 happened. Oh, the
Uh,
first 9/11,
yeah, the first nine
the
eleven happened.
bombing,
The bombing happened
and
when I
then
was a Mennonite.
93.
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
Crazy.
Mm,
Yeah, the 90s were like pretty good for everyone that wasn't in a prohibitive
Yeah,
institutionalized place that's really scary.
that's what I've
So,
heard from other
yeah.
friends.
So I'm sorry you missed it. It came and went.
Yeah,
We're creating a new world in every moment, but
at least we have some good like music and movies and stuff to
yeah,
kind of tap in
totally.
a little bit.
So you 6 to
14.
14.
Yeah, 6 to 14.
And I
Yeah,
also like I want to be very brotherly careful around how the chapter here ends. Like
yeah,
whatever you're happy to share or willing to share, I think I'm not a tabloid. I'm not like a gotcha journalist. Like I'm not trying to expose anything. I think I would just ask you from the place of like usefulness, right? It's like whatever you want to share about that part of your story and the migration into, as we call it, like Act Two.
yeah,
Like whatever you want to share is up to you from a place of just like helpfulness to other people.
yeah, yeah. I appreciate that. I'm a pretty open book. I will say I really like to share my story, but I will say for some viewers, like maybe a trigger warning for abuse, sexual abuse, and yeah, I would say that's about it. So yeah, just kind of putting that out there.
You're
If
a
that's
victim of sexual abuse
I'm a victim of sexual abuse, yeah,
in the Mennonite religion,
in my family, and
in your
also
family.
religious abuse in that religion, and sexual abuse in other relationships as well, moving past. So my story can get a little dark, a little intense for some people, but I'm happy to share it.
Well, it's it's profound, and I think a lot of people haven't endured that, and so it's just it's kind of like for someone like me who hasn't come close to anything like that, it's like at least in this incarnation, I don't know, as a spiritual mystic, I believe we're all going through ups and downs and lefts and rights for 100 million years. But in this incarnation, I haven't. And it's really inspiring to me. And it should be to people that have gone through more than me, but not what you've gone through. It's
Mm,
kind of like if Kayla can phoenix these ashes, then maybe
a
you
hundred,
can too. Like the
a
sun is
hundred
going to
percent.
come up
Absolutely.
tomorrow for at least another billion years. The Earth might be
Right.
hotter, but it's very possible. So
Yeah, and
you,
I think,
yeah,
the reason why I'm happy to share specific details is because it can be really helpful if somebody has gone through something similar or is going through something similar. It can be really helpful to know that you're not alone. And I am in no way, shape, or form a special case. All the same rules apply to me. The journey is rough, but we
yeah,
can do it. We can totally, totally do it. So,
and also that's beautiful. And also, it's not your fault.
right.
It's not your
Yeah.
fault. It seems like, and I'm not a therapist or licensed anything. I don't have a license of anything. I'm an amateur all across the board. But I think people do, or at least from my understanding, victims of really difficult situations can internalize that from
Hmm.
a self
Hmm.
guilt, from a self shame thing, and kind of the original sin doctrine migrates into the pervasive psyche of just I'm so bad I deserve this and so on. And it's just like, so we're happy to
Yeah,
megaphone. You're not to blame.
100%. And also in the moments that for me were so visceral, I have these very specific moments that I can remember like tapping right into where there was messages of like you need to ask God for forgiveness,
Mm,
or wow, like why am I not worthy of having like a father? That was a big one for
mm,
years and years in my subconscious. That was a huge one, was I'm
yeah.
not worthy. And yeah, the message for me, like to really sing from the mountaintops, is you are so worthy and inherently worthy of God's love. You are love, you came from love, and that's where you will return. And there is no need to fear any other place, you know? So yeah, so we can just go
Beautiful.
right into
So
it if
I
you
mean, we can
want.
wrap there. I mean, that's really that's the crux of it, frankly.
Yeah.
We're not going to get to anything more profound than that. I mean, we will obviously we'll keep going, but I thank you for articulating that. It's important that people know that, and even if nothing's happened to you, if you've had the
Yeah.
worst of it, you've had a great life, you've had an average quote unquote life, whatever it is, like we're all beloved. We're all beloved children of Creator.
Yeah, exactly. And I do have some friends who they have this like survivor's guilt. They're like, nothing bad has
Hmm.
ever happened to me in my life. Why am I
Yeah.
not happy? And it's like, we're all doing the same thing. We're all here to forget and to remember. We're all figuring it out. We all are here to suffer, honestly, and learn from that suffering because we live in a dualistic reality where
Well,
grace is required. Compassion is commanded. It's we have to learn those things in order to like, yeah, get the most out of this experience, this school that we're in.
yeah. What A Course in Miracles says is it's this world is founded on the false idea of separation. So
Exactly.
that's why it's a polarity world. It's because we
Exactly.
think we're separate, but we're wrong. The ego is birthed out of that deluded thought. And so, of course, it's brutal. It's like it calls the world like a dusty desert where creatures come to die of thirst, and like it's pretty metal around its like world.
I
Like
love that.
it's not quite world denialism. I don't know that we not to be too theological here, but I was talking to my dad about this actually recently about like the image of it. It's like my dad is not a non-dualist, but he's intellectual enough to like talk about it. And he goes, look, I'm at the carnival. I'm gonna ride the rides,
Yeah.
like which is like and I was like, I like that. It has like a more pleasant, because some people say like prison planet or like,
Yeah. I,
this is
I, I
like,
feel like if you're coming at it, if you're coming at it from like a victim perspective,
yeah,
it's gonna suck.
it's
It's
gonna be
really gonna
heavy.
suck. And
Yeah,
and I'm not gonna lie, like being in victimhood, because especially when you are a victim, it is one of the hardest things to like get out of
yeah.
that whole mentality of like, why is this stuff happening to me all the time? But it's like, no, just be here, like learn to be with it, ride the waves. You're gonna get crashed a few times, and then eventually you're gonna learn how to surf.
Right.
So, but
So it gets dark towards the end of Act One.
it
You know,
gets
I th what I really wanted to bring up on the show with you was that your abuser was protected by the church, to compound on the unspeakable difficulties of the experiences themselves. You think that the community is going to help you, but they help your abuser.
right. Well, and here's another part of it too. So we'll just kind of get into it a little bit if you want right now.
Please.
So basically, I can't tell you the exact age, but it was around 3, 4 years old, is when the sexual abuse started, from my father. And uh and then when we joined the Mennonite church, it was kind of on and off, right? For my whole life, it was on and off until 14 years old. My whole life until 14 years old. And I actually came out about it when I was 6, before we joined the Mennonite church, and I told my grandparents. And they never told my mom. They went to my dad and they said, "Are you ever going to do this again?" And he said, "No, no, I'll never do it again. I'll never do it again." And so that was the first time where it was like I was trying to kind of like speak up about it, and it was silenced. And I was not protected at all. So obviously when I was 6 years old, I didn't realize that I couldn't understand that fully. But I think it's something that I really internalized. So then it was like I was holding it, holding it, holding it, holding it, and I was getting super sick. I was I was constantly having these like, stomach issues. It would land me in the hospital, and the doctors would be like, I don't know. We can't find anything wrong with you. I would have symptoms like mono, but most of it was because I couldn't sleep at night. I was so deathly afraid that it would happen, and I never knew when it would happen. And another piece of this was my dad later on, after I was 14 and our family separated, he was actually diagnosed with schizophrenia, bipolar, and split personality. And those things they'll kind of rear their head every 7 years and get worse. And so I think it was when I was around 10 or 11, it started getting so bad that he was having blackouts. He wouldn't remember what he was doing. He would have these really violent kind of like blow ups, where he would just take a sledgehammer and take out a whole wall of the house out of nowhere. So there was a ton. He was very, very physically abusive, verbally abusive, and then, on top of that, the sexual abuse, which I was not telling anyone about. And so, and then on top of that, it was just a lot of instability. You never knew what he was going to do. Sometimes he would wake us up at like 4 a.m. and say, I'm going to drop you guys off, me and my two brothers. He's like, I'm going to drop you off at the end, like the bottom of this mountain, and you got to climb to the top, and then I'll pick you up at 4 p.m. So he'd drive us to this mountain. I remember this was one of my worst memories, was like having to
He
kind
was
of
an insanely deranged
totally,
person. Yeah.
totally insane. Or like, I know some of you did something wrong, and so
Climb
like,
this mountain.
yes, just like total instability and not safe, and very, very, very scary all the time. And then on the other side, it was like that was home life. But on the outside, he had this big, huge, bright smile, and he was really charming. And everyone saw us as this like beautiful family. And I would always make people cookies, and
And
I
you
would
were
bring
the
them
little
loaf of bread.
performers at the
I was
church.
the,
And
I was
yeah,
the performer.
yeah.
And yeah.
It's really, I mean, it's a really dark, twisted kind of duality of that mix of like the internal family situation is hellacious.
Yeah.
And then, and because the church elders get wind of this through your mom or through what, how did it kind of become
So
more well known?
how it all came out was when I was 14, I knew it was getting to a point where I was not going to be able to handle
Yeah.
any escalation.
Yeah.
And he was telling me he was going to marry me. He thought that
Jesus.
he was going to marry me. And I was just like, I can't anymore. Like, this is beyond. So I told my brother, and he did not believe me. And then I told my friend, one of my best friends, who had also been through something when she was a little bit younger. And she was like, you got to tell people, you got to tell people.
Yeah.
I told my mom, and she said, are you sure? No. And then, and because part of the thing that happened actually, and I'm sure a lot of people experience this, is that when I would tell people, I would like have these really nervous laugh, giggle thing,
Mm.
because I was so steeped in like this shame and just like, yeah. And so I think it was really confusing for a lot of people when you don't realize what is happening with, nothing about trauma. It can be really confusing. So that was going on. So eventually one weekend we went to Seattle to help my aunt move, my dad's little sister. And I told her on a walk, and she was the only person who heard me. and really, and she just started bawling. And I remember looking at her like, oh my gosh, like, why is she, oh no, she's crying. And I felt so bad. And um, she knew the seriousness of it though. And everyone around me was just like, yeah, I don't know, whatever.
Was pretty much everyone else that you had told in the church, and she was the first one that wasn't?
My friend who I'd grown up with was not in the church.
Okay.
But she had no, she was just a little
She was
teenage
also a little
girl,
girl
you
too,
know?
and so
Yeah,
yeah,
she was in
yeah,
her own abusive family dynamic, so it was like a whole thing.
yeah.
But
But
yeah,
the baby
essentially,
sister of the crazy dad
yeah,
who knew him, she knew him from when he was, as you said, kind of the secular party years. She has a whole different image of him
yeah,
than the Mennonites and
that's
people
right.
in your immediate. Yeah.
And yeah, she wasn't in the Mennonite
No.
church or anything like that. She was 24 at the time, actually.
Mm.
Um, and she actually ended up taking me in one night. My grandpa met me, my dad's dad met me at my cousin's house. Uh, and I remember I was like jumping on the trampoline and he came out and he had this really serious look on his face. And I knew, I was like, oh boy, he's going to talk to me about this finally. So I ran to him and he said, Kayla, I heard about what's going on with your dad. And I just want to ask you, do you think it's going to happen again? And I said, yeah, for sure. And he said, okay, then I want you to take these clothes you have and I'm gonna take you to Seattle right now to stay with your aunt. You're not gonna go home. And that was the moment I was taken out of the house. And everything just,
Yeah.
everything kind of exploded at that point. And
10 years.
what's that?
It's 10 years. I mean, it's what a blessing that she heard you and they acted on it, but the grandparents should have acted on it 8 years prior.
Oh, believe me,
Yeah.
yes. Yeah. So,
So
um,
then you grew up in Washington. I mean, were you no contact with them? What's
yeah.
the epilogue to the, yeah, immediate family?
What ended up happening was my dad's best friend was a sheriff at the town I grew up in, this teeny tiny town, 500 people. And his best friend arrested him, took him to jail, bawling his eyes out the whole time. And and then while my dad was in jail, for a couple months, I was in Seattle with my aunt just to kind of get away from the whole situation.
Yeah.
And then we decided, okay, I'm going to go back to Olympia to be with my mom and my brothers and get ready for the school year and kind of just like ground in with my community again. And we were sort of trying to figure out if we were going to be in the Mennonite church or if we were going to veer off and join the world. Because there were some things, especially my mom was just like, this ain't right. Like there's some stuff that I'm just not down with at all. And without my dad's pressure and sort of like narcissistic
He
controlling.
was the one that was really into the night thing. Your mom just kind of went along with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
And what were some characteristics that turned her off about it? It was like very patriarchal.
Yeah, very patriarchal, very, very disciplinary. Like she really didn't like the amount of discipline that was happening in our household. And I don't know that that's so much Mennonite. I don't think if anyone was to tell the head bishops of the church, no one would be upset that we were getting spanked excessively. Um, so yeah, there was definitely different things like that. And they were telling her, don't, don't divorce him. It's not okay. You got to stick it through. Got to keep your family together. And she was like, I don't think that's true. I
No.
don't, I don't think that's true.
Time to go.
Yeah, time to go. And yeah, so I went back to um McCleary, and at that time we were still in the Mennonite church. This is a really important and hilarious kind of, not really hilarious, but in a way it's a hilarious detail of how we actually left the church. Which was that we went back and she had me read some pages in her diary because she couldn't speak, she couldn't tell me out loud. She said, I just need you to read this. And I said,
Mm.
okay. So I read, and it was taught, it was, she had written about how one of the head bishops with 10 children and a wife had been coming over to our house when we were at school, trying to give her money and help her out, and also was copping some feels and was trying to hook up with her and kind of trying to manipulate his way into her pants. And I just remember like shutting that and just being so livid, like just like everything in my body was like, dude, I'm gonna just smash that guy's face in, you know? Like I'm taking him down. And it's actually funny. He looks just like Donald Trump, same hairdo and everything.
Oh God.
Yeah. I know. So
Yeah,
anyway,
they're just, it's a good old boy patriarchal Iron
yeah,
Age harem bullshit
right.
club of like, you know, sexual objectification
That's right. That's right. I take
and
what I want.
no accountability.
Yeah.
And it needed, yeah, I mean, it had, and it needed some fierce females to get these guys in line and get them, you know, so that was enough where you guys were like, this community's
There's
rotten.
more. There's more.
Oh
There's
gosh.
more. Okay, so we bring everyone together. I tell on him, right? I go to them and I'm like, this is what happened.
Mm.
What the F? His daughters go to him and he said, yeah, I did do that. He totally admitted. And then the whole church got everyone together, put them in the front, and they said, now, Randy, don't ever do that again, okay? And then they looked at my mom and they said, you're a temptress. You don't belong here. You
Oh
can leave.
boy.
And we were all just like, woo! Like, thank God. See you later. Yeah.
Wow. That's so wild. It's like a Rick and Morty episode, or you know, it's like some bizarro, like, gosh, it's stunning narrative.
It's just so obvious. It's like it blows my mind that there are communities that are like, oh yeah, no, that makes sense. That's a good idea. Totally. That
Oh,
that's still a thing.
you're a predator. Just, you know,
Yeah,
okay, all right, back to normal
right.
because our community, okay, Amazing Grace from the top, you know, yeah, disembodied,
Unreal.
unintegrated,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sending peace to all beings. And so you get out of there, and then you know you go punk rock.
I went full punk rock. I
Yeah,
did.
yeah,
I was in the swinging pendulum for a while.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it took me a while to find my balance. So yeah, then I was full on. I mean, I had so much anger and despair and sadness and loneliness and pain. And the thing that made me feel the best was just like the how like hardcore metal, like just like blah.
Hmm.
And I was in the middle of the mosh pit, like, yeah, punch my face, like just get it.
Hmm. Yeah.
And my two brothers and I started a metal band, and I was a drummer, and I had a mohawk, and I was just like,
You
I'm
were
going.
literally punk rock, not just metaphorically. You were in a punk rock band.
I was
That's how
punk
punk rock you
rock.
were with a
I was,
mohawk. It's
yeah,
amazing, but it's
yeah.
completely rational. You know, it's like I like how dare
It's
you
so okay.
not be in one, you know?
Right? I freaking love that I did that. It's so awesome. So you can imagine my mom's new husband, who is also extremely religious, uh,
Oh boy.
so much so that he didn't even go to a church because he couldn't find one that was like he agreed with enough. Because
Mm-mm.
he was so like, high up there in his knowledge and all this stuff. So uh
You guys didn't get along.
we did not get along, and more about that later. But so when I was 16, we, one day I came back from school and he had gone through all of my music and my diary and my books, like everything in my room and everything he didn't like, he threw it in the garbage. And he's like this super like tall kind
The
of
new guy, the new dad.
the new dad.
Oh,
This is
is
the new
old dad in
jail.
prison? Okay.
Jail.
Thankfully, yes.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Old
old
dad's in
dad's in jail.
jail. So your mom gets with in the punk rock period. You guys move out of Mennonite town.
Yeah.
You're in a bigger city in Washington.
Yeah. Olympia. Yep.
Okay, Olympia. So punk rock makes sense.
Yep.
But there's still this weird new religious stepdad.
Yeah, and he wanted me to wear boys' clothing because he was attracted to me.
Oh no.
So there was a whole thing with that, right? And he was just like he was such a harsh, like stern guy, and he would have the Bible on his knee, and he would
Were
like
you
hit the
communicating
Bible.
with your mom how strange this is that you left this toxic fundamentalist religion and now you're dating a fundamentalist religion guy who all like has attraction to you? Like it's just
Yeah.
like
And there
is
was
she
always
did she just create the 2.0? Like what?
yeah,
Come on, mom.
she has her own experience of the whole thing, right? Like like I see it from this one perspective, and she's seeing it from like, dude, your dad went to jail. I can't take care of you guys. I haven't worked for 15 years. I have 3 kids. I'm in debt. We're like, we can't pay for food. I don't know what to do. And this guy comes along, which I actually had met when I was 6 years old. So we knew him for a long time. And
Oh, okay.
he
In
was
the
an old
early
fan.
days of the church tours.
Yeah, it was like a Bible, like a home fellowship group with homeschool moms. He was a part of that. He
Hmm.
would come to and kind of lead some of those meetings at this house. So anyway, we knew him, and I think she felt, somewhat safe with him, and was also still really wanting to be like centered in Christianity. And he happened to have quite a bit of money. And she was like, okay, thank God. Like, you saved me. It was my knight in shining armor kind of thing. And, unfortunately, it did not turn out the way that she thought it would. And he was really resentful of the fact that she had children. Um, and yeah, I think they really loved
Like
each
not
other.
with him, not with her, him, you mean, Yeah, yeah.
But he was almost 20 years older than her, actually.
Mm.
So he was quite a bit older.
Hmm.
Um, so anyway, the whole thing that kind of played out there was when I was 16, and after he had done that, I had come home from school, and he was standing in my doorway, like really trying to kind of, intimidate me into being subservient and listening. And I was like, man, like you really can't do that. Like you can't do that kind of thing. I didn't raise my voice, I didn't scream or anything. Just like you really can't do that. And he said, well, if you don't want to follow the rules in my house, you can just leave. And so I did. I I packed a duffel bag and I went out at 10 p.m. and um, called my grandma on the payphone. She came and picked me up from Seattle, and the next chapter of my life started.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fare thee well. Yeah. Entrances and exits.
Yeah. So then I was really out in the world. It felt very vulnerable. I'm sure a lot of people can relate to that when you are in a very close-knit community, or like that really there's a lot of love and safety in that, with fundamental Christianity and like different religions and communities. There's really so much beauty in that.
Yeah.
And when you leave, it's pretty scary.
Yeah.
I had severe anxiety. I couldn't hold down a job. Um, I had to work. Ended up dropping out of school because I had to work. And eventually I got into like a little program at a community college in Bellevue for dropout kids. And it
Hmm.
was like trying to guide us how what would you want to do? What's your dream? What's your gifts? And mine was always music. I loved playing music. And I had such a wonderful, magical time going to this little community college, and it just opened me up to so much. Um, College was not something that was allowed for women in Mennonite religion, so it was
In
something
the
that I never,
1600s.
yeah, right. So I never thought that that would be my life, and it was just one beautiful and wonderful. And my aunt had gotten me into some therapy, and I ended up going through like 6 different therapists that summer, and really just trying to like figure out uh, my mental health. And actually, the reason why I went through so many therapists was because a lot of them would see me and they're like, "You're good, you're fine." Because I was so good at pretending that I was
Masking it.
okay.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
so good at it. I'd done it my whole life. And one therapist did see me and she said, you know, when you hit your 20s, I know you think you're doing really good right now, but when you hit your 20s, it's gonna hit you and you're gonna realize the severity of what you've endured. So anyway, when I was at the community college, I met my first love, Michael James Pollock. We had this moment of like he was standing in the doorway. It was like this like tunnel vision. Ooh. And I
Mm.
got up to say hi and I was like, ah, and I tripped over something and ripped my pants and he just kind of stood there staring at me like laughing. And we just had this like really strong moment. And then he went on his way and there was no exchange of numbers or anything. And then later on, a couple weeks later, I was sitting out on the campus, like a table there, and he came up and he's like, "Oh my gosh, newspaper girl." He's like, I've been looking everywhere for you. I was telling my whole family about you." Um, and he called me newspaper girl because I was in the area where they write the newspaper for the school.
Mm.
And so we ended up having this like really beautiful fast, love story. And he was the one that introduced the Tao Te Ching to me.
Mm.
And I remember when I opened up and I started reading it, I was like, none of this makes any sense, but oh my God, like something is opening in me. Like, I don't even know how to explain it, but this is just like, it felt like there was this flower in my chest that just was blossoming and it was
Beautiful.
so profound um and his presence, like he was one of those people where he just didn't at all hold anything back. It was just like, oh my God, you're the most beautiful girl in the whole world, and I love you. And it was just like blah, really
Mm.
loud, beautiful energy,
Authenticity.
uh, super authentic. And he was just so deeply in the Buddhism, Zen Buddhism, Taoism, like enlightenment, all of that.
Yeah.
And just like a beautiful, beautiful, bright, bright person. And he had this band, and the band name was Karuna. And
Mm.
they had just gotten like a record label in New York. And one night he had called me.
Isn't that compassion and Pali, I think? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. In Sanskrit, I think karuna is compassion in Sanskrit,
Mm.
I
Yeah.
believe.
It's in one of the Buddhist languages. Yeah.
Mhm. Um, so anyway, one night he called me and he said, there's all this amazing stuff going on, and my parents really want to help us like get on our feet together. I'd really like to move forward with you, and we can look at some places to rent in Olympia so you can be close to your family. And um, yeah, it was all just this very like exciting, like amazing love. And And then I didn't hear from him for 2 weeks. And I was just like, I was so crushed. I was like, what the heck is going on? And it was the last day of the school, like the quarter. And I went back to my aunt's house, who I was staying with in Bellevue. And she met me at the door. She's like, Kayla, you gotta sit down. And I was like, okay. So I sit down and she said, Michael's parents called and Michael died. He just fell asleep and he never woke up. And that was the night he had actually called me, we found out.
Jesus.
And that was just the most tragic and beautiful, perfect catalyst for me to actually finally start feeling my suffering,
Mm.
because I couldn't ignore it anymore. It was just like, I gotta go down into like the depths of the depths of the depths because I can't resist it anymore. There's
Yeah.
no more in me that can like stop this. Um, and
Yeah, the mask's off, the charade's over,
yeah,
you know. Yeah.
yeah, it's just like have to surrender. Um, and yeah,
Major catalyst, period. I mean, right? I
that
mean,
was it.
obviously there's a lot of pain there, and you know, I think what's it's like you think it's just not going to ever stop with you, you know? It's like you have this traumatic upbringing, you have this traumatic adolescence, and you meet the love, and then he dies tragically. Like it's like all of this is designed for you to be in this moment, be fully with who you are, and be fully contemplative of all these practices and processes and experiences that you've endured.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. Some would say like I was like set up for failure, and others would say I'm set up for great success, you know?
Yeah.
So,
The Hindus and the mystics talk about it like curriculum. You know, it's like if your classes are really hard, then that means that you are gifted and talented. You know,
yeah,
it's like you're in 11th grade. People that haven't had that are in 5th grade. You know, it's like I mean, I'm
or they're
also
just
like
having a restful life. They
or that was the previous life and now
That was
they're having
previous
a
life.
restful life.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I made a jokey before I get into more darkness. I made a jokey video recently about my neighbor Mick. Every day of his life sits out on his porch. This is completely true. Sits out on his porch and smokes cigarettes and like goes back inside. And he's retired, so but he didn't work that hard. I love the guy. But he's just like, and then I saw Dolores Cannon, like, and I'm like, but here's the other thing, I'm like, you need a light, you know? It's like I'm not judging him. Like
No,
he comes
yeah,
out and has a cigarette, we have a laugh, and then I go back in, and then I come back out, he's still out there. You know, it's like he's a porch dweller. And then I see Dolores Cannon, and she's like, some people have a restful lifetime. Like
that's right.
sometimes they were just working really hard for like multiple lifetimes, and then they just have one where they can just kind of. So you're right. I mean,
Yeah.
there's this level of complexity that's beyond our little, you know.
Oh, there's so
Yeah,
much of that. There's and growth is not linear. Like
right.
in reality, it's not linear because there's so many layers that go this
Yeah.
way, so many layers that go, it's very, yeah, not something our little sweet baby brains can understand. So,
Well, and I, you know, we should get to happier stuff in a minute, but you know, I just want to say like the curriculum stuff too is something that I can kind of grab onto in the storm, which is Gaza, which is this absolute hellscape of an apocalypse for these people that are just continually victimized and their entire lives are being destroyed seemingly nonstop. And it's like it makes we're all everyone's losing our minds, and it's just like we can't do anything, and it's just like they can't get the help. And like all I have aside from like sending peace and money is
Right.
this idea around curriculum. Like I really, and I've seen a couple there. Ahed Tamimi, I think is her name. Anyway, she was arrested like 10 years ago as a kid. She was like 12 or 13 or something. And a soldier, an IDF soldier, like broke her cousin's arm or something, like in front of her, like a little boy. And she got in his face, just blonde hair. And
Oh,
so she went viral like 10 years ago because there's kind of this like white versus colored thing
sure.
going on,
Yeah.
right? But like, there's a lot of Palestinians that have blonde hair and blue eyes, Arabs, and she's that. And anyway, she gets up in his face. So she became this image like of Palestinian resistance there for a while. She was in an Israeli jail. She's endured incredible horrors. And she was interviewed in this movie recently called Where the Olive Trees Weep, which
Mm-hmm.
check that out.
Wow.
Gabor Mate is in that, who's a
Yeah, I
saint
saw, I haven't seen it, but I
in
know
the
about it.
promo for it. She's interviewed and she says, these people are suffering. She's talking about the Israelis and the Israeli military. She says, they're suffering deeply and they're like, it's like, I'm like, you're Thich Nhat Hanh. Like, it's because I was like, this is a bodhisattva. That's what a bodhisattva says.
Yeah,
It's like, if
yeah,
you've been, you're the face of the resistance, you've been in Israeli jails. It's like, she has this like level of like Buddha like compassion
yeah.
for
I know
them.
who you're talking about. Yeah, yep,
It's like
yep.
it's really profound. And so all that's to say is like there might be something to this curriculum shit with these like I think that there's probably some very advanced souls that are enduring this kind of final chapter, if you will, or this kind of there a lot of veils are being broken by the Palestinians due to the weight of the apocalyptic 3D that's
Well,
taking place.
okay, like we have got to learn what compassion actually is, for
Mm,
one,
yeah.
because a lot of people, if I ask somebody like, "Hey, what do you think compassion is?" Nobody really knows really what that means. Like
Mm,
the translation karuna means to be with suffering, to be with. That's what it
mm,
means. There's so much like in every direction that's trying to take us away from our ability to be with things, whether it's to be with well, first off, to be with our own suffering. And you see it like in all the capitalism and this constant pull for all of us to become black holes instead of a star, right? It's like consume, 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 consume. You need this, you need that to be happy. You got to have this. Grab, 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 grab. We're
mm.
inverting our energy
Oh,
to
you
be
feel
more,
lack? Would you like to feel this much less lack
yeah.
for
And it's like
$159.99? Yeah,
you're making the hole bigger. You're making the hole
yeah.
bigger. So it's like until we're able to actually be present with what's alive in us and to feel all the stuff, to feel all the feelings, and to face all of our demons and our shame and our darkness and this shit that feels horrible, and to actually be with it without trying to necessarily even fix it. Just learn how to be with yourself, and then we can create from that place. But it's like I feel like so much of what's going on, and I'm sure you're going to agree because you just kind of said this in the beginning, is like when you're so separate from the truth, when you're so deep in this illusion of separateness, that is the most painful place that any of us could ever be, because we're separating ourselves from actual love, from like the essence of real true love, which is God, which is our source, which is where we come from, which is who we are. And so the more we get away from ourselves and that and all of these facades and all these ways of trying to gather power or whatever, that's why the people in Gaza are suffering. That's why. So we have to just keep shouting it from the mountaintop.
Yeah.
and trying to like also do it within ourselves
Hmm.
and share that with our community. But it's deep work, you know.
Yeah, it is.
It's not for the faint of heart because it's hard. It's hard.
Well,
It's
you're
a totally
somebody
worth
who
it.
can get this across. I mean, uh, everybody needs to shut the hell up when you're talking because you've endured it all and came out the other end. You know, I love what you're saying, and you know, I think my work, I'm personally stepping in as a writer, as an artist, to really kind of define kind of dharmic responsibility. You know, what does that mean? The call. I'm also like hesitant with some of that language around like God called me to do, because that's can be there's like
Yeah.
Christian egotism to some of that shit. But anyway, you know, I do think that every person has this level of like responsibility from their soulful, what their unique recipe is in the wholeness. And mine, I think, is appreciating the mystics, the world mystics and mystic philosophy, and like trying to use this persona, this personality, which will be bones and dust in a few decades, hopefully longer, maybe than that. But you know, while I'm here in in this one, really try to make a lot of what the mystics' teachings are contemporary in an accessible way. And you know what you're talking about in terms of like being stuck in the two-ness, like, dude, the mystics are so funny. Rumi has this great bit, I'm paraphrasing, but he says like half of life is lost in pleasing others, half of life is lost in anxieties caused by others. Leave this play, you've played enough. You know,
Mm,
it's like and a chorus says similar stuff too, like you're looking for freedom exactly where it isn't, which is outside of you. You know,
that's
it's like
right.
that
That's
all
right.
the mystics and all the world kind of perennial mystic philosophy all has this kind of playful, it's you're right. That is free will. You're a child with creator, so you get to choose. But you know, and Byron Katie says, "I don't mean to take your hell away from you." You know, it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
it's up to you. But you know, just pointing this out that you don't have to. You know, you've played
That's
enough.
right. Yeah. Yeah. So I just want to share because it's kind of speaking on that same note of you know, taking someone's hell away from them. But part of the story, which this is jumping ahead a little bit, was 8 years ago. You know, I was always really trying to find some similar ground with my stepdad, and he was really passionate, and I love to debate and talk about things and like, you know, just get really heady about stuff and ask questions. And uh, the last conversation we had was about homosexual rights, gun laws, and whether or not you were inherently worthy of God's love. And a week later, after that conversation, you can guess where he stood on all of those, right? He killed himself with a gun.
Mm.
And that to me was just like, you know, when I think about the Christian dogma and this whole thing around Jesus heals everything. Will save you from everything. In a way, I'm like, oh my God, yes. I love Jesus. Like 100,000% that is my master. Like in everything I do, like I want to follow that. Yes.
Yeah.
And you got to learn how to heal your trauma.
Yeah.
You got to learn some other stuff too. Like it's not just all going to be found in that dogmatic
It's a
structure.
bizarro twisting of the thing, just like what earlier
Yeah.
when you're talking about the Lord wills the thing of the little kid girls talking about, you know, but it's this like forced, you know, spoon fed dogmatic robotic thing. um this one of the best comment that I don't know where they got this. I haven't seen it in any literature, but somebody commented one time on one of my things. They said Christians are worshiping the doorway instead of walking through it. And it's
Oh
like,
my God.
I was like, you
Ah,
just summed up my book is 320 pages. You just summed up my book in one sentence, two phrases. And so, I mean, that's really true. It's like, you're right. It's like there's this like blanket, just Jesus blanket over everything. And it's like, no, he was the most amazing, like, come on, come on through, brother. Come on through, sister,
yeah,
And
yeah,
John says, isn't it spoken you that ye are gods and that you will become sons of God greater than me? I mean, they always quote John 3:16, they quote John
right. Yeah.
4. There's always John is just he's this kingly Jesus. But there's also some really good mystical Gnostic stuff in John, and we're not quoting that, where it's about the potential of the student to get on the master's level. So I'm right there with you.
Well,
Of
can I just also say, like, just to like
course.
be your fan for a minute of your book.
Okay.
Love so much how
You're
you
sweet.
talk about the book of Thomas.
Yeah.
I didn't know about any of that stuff. I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not a Bible scholar, right? So like the way that you made the information so accessible, and it was like dude, you read the book of Thomas and it's like that's
Unbelievable.
like psychedelic shit right there.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
like that's and it's just, and then in the beginning when you're talking about Pelagius and Augustine and like how I didn't know any of that stuff, but kind of like intuitively I knew it. I was like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to live my life by this book, even
Right.
though I do really, really like love Jesus. And that took me a long time to even get to that point after leaving, right?
Totally.
That was like a
Totally.
whole other journey.
Yeah.
So
You're like, I
like
don't want, I've seen people where they're like, I don't want to even see the word Bible or the name Jesus, and it's like, that's like what you grew
I
up
was
as
that
like,
person for a long time. I was that
I
person.
totally empathize with that.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's okay. Like you don't ever have to. If that's not what you feel called towards or
Right.
that's not your path, it's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
It's okay. Um, so yeah, anyway, I just really
Thank you.
your
Thomas
book,
is terrific.
yeah.
I'm happy to be a commercial for the Gospel of Thomas. If my work is Kayla discovering the Gospel of Thomas, then
You're done.
I'm
You're
pleased.
yeah.
I'm
Now
satisfied.
just go meditate under
I've done it.
a Bodhi tree.
Yeah, I mean, that's really what I'm trying to do. And some people are like, "Do you have any book recommendations?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm kind of joking when I say, yeah, mine." But it's like because my book is a book recommendation book. Like what I'm trying to do
Yeah.
in the book is be like, and then there's this guy, Ramana Maharshi, and then there's this woman,
So good know.
Byron Katie, and then
Yes,
there's
right.
this
Oh my gosh, such an
psychonaut,
work.
Ram Dass, and then there's this Gnostic gospel that we discovered in 1945, which is like a Hollywood movie that hasn't come out yet, where they dug up these ancient texts that we didn't have for 2000 flipping years. And
So
now we have them. For 2000 years, we had almost nothing of those texts. We had shards and fragments.
mhm.
In the last century, there was fragments of Thomas found in a garbage dump. We didn't have the whole thing. We knew they were early because we have the church fathers' writings. So we have them basically be like, Thomas is bullshit. Da, da, da. We're like, oh, this is that one. Like
Such a
it's a
conspiracy.
miracle that we have these. I know.
Wow, that's so
and
wild.
and it's sad to me. I mean, I think it's like you're kind of re-inspiring me to continue to talk about Thomas in the Nag Hammadi Library, which is kind of getting it seems like, especially Mary Magdalene, deep bow to that master.
Oh, right,
Um,
yeah.
you know, I think there's a resurgence of interest in her and kind of in a new way that's aligned with divine femme and, you know, the kind of beautiful spiritual gram, you know, spiritual
Yeah,
talk. People are kind of like, wait, there's more to this, you know, and
I'm excited to see it ground down a little bit into a little bit
yeah,
more substance.
yeah,
But it's beautiful. I agree. It's so needed too. Because
yeah.
I
That's like the
honestly
premise
believe,
for this show is like, in the intro to the show, I talk about the there's like mystics online that like I love, and also like maybe like a textbook wouldn't be terrible.
yeah.
And then and then there's scholars like Dan McClellan, who's fantastic. Or do you follow Dan? Do you know about him?
No, uh-uh.
Because he has like 500,000 followers like on all platforms. Like he's huge. He's a PhD and he has those degrees behind him. He
Okay.
dunked on, speaking of Gospel of Thomas, he dunked on my Gospel of Thomas video 2 years ago. Yeah.
Really?
And then I did a react. Anyway, yeah.
Just
I'll give you more details on that, but basically he what he does is primarily reactions to a lot of Christian content, which is not scholarly. And so he goes through and, you know, just kind of rips these people apart from the
oh, I do
objective
know that
way.
guy. I do know that guy.
Yeah, he's good. I mean, I think he's
Yeah,
doing really good work. He's doing the
yeah,
Lord's work, but he's a little too takedowny, and
I
he's, in
agree.
my loving opinion, and but keep it up, Dan. But he has not, I'm pretty sure, ever tried a mushroom. You know, it's like
Mhm.
he's
Yeah,
still pretty secular with it and like scholarly, and like he's just an example. There's a few of those guys where it's like, well, we have the translation, da, 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 and like we need that, but kind of what I'm trying to do. And by the way, I'm not a Bible scholar. I'm a student of Bible
yeah,
scholarship
yeah,
with my
yeah.
humble bachelor's. Um, but I'm a passionate student of it. And I also have eaten mushrooms this week. And so um
Right
can
now.
we balance the worlds? Yeah, I'm tripping balls right
It's like
now.
you look kind of tired, but you're doing fine.
Yeah, I don't even see you. No. So you end up in Act 3, which is
Yeah.
a little island called Kauai.
No, oh my gosh, no.
Now
This is
you
like
have like a
six,
million
I
years.
think, something like
You're
that.
in Act 6 now.
Well, I mean, let's like spare some of the details, right? But we'll just
Well,
say that
we gotta save it for your memoir because that shit needs to come out.
I don't know.
Well, are you writing this? Are
I
you
am
writing
writing. I am
things?
writing things. Yeah. And also, can I just say, like,
Hmm.
you've been the most incredible motivator for me, and just like I feel like you're this like awesome cheerleader behind the scenes that's just like, Kayla, share your story. It's important. Like just, and I will be the one to just like hold it down for you to do that. And it is the biggest gift for me ever, because my story is just my story. Like, I don't know, it's just my story. It's not a big
It's the
deal.
easiest thing to do on planet Earth. You're really sweet to say that it's means a lot to you,
Well, but
because it's
you have
really
been
just
the
like the
one.
most effortless thing for me to be like, your story's insane. You know, part of it is because I'm getting stuff where people saying this really helped me,
Yeah,
and it's like, you know, it's kind of like, what the hell do I know? You know, okay, I know some
not a
shit.
lot.
I know some
Well,
shit,
what I
and I can point out the parallels, and I can give you a chuckle, and you know, it's like I know there's just so many flippin' people. I keep saying flippin' because I want to put this on Spotify. Um, there's
Yeah,
just so many people that grew up in tight religious bullshit, and there's so many people that are in the act two. There's
yeah.
so many punk rockers that like just did mushrooms like 2 months ago, and they're like, wait, you're telling me Richard Dawkins is wrong too? Like, not only is the Baptist church I went to wrong, but Richard Dawkins is wrong too. Like, what's anything, you know? And it's just like,
Yeah.
right this way, my friend. Like, here's Carl Jung, Joe Campbell, Marianne Williamson and the Nag Hammadi library. You know, it's like, you're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
crazy. Like, come on into Mystic World. And so that's what I'm doing. And so I'm getting people are appreciating that. And it's just like, there's an army of people and probably a ton of women, you know, much to
Hmm.
the
Oh yeah.
dismay of the reality of this is that there's probably a lot of young people that have endured what you've gone through, or at least some of it. And it's just like,
And some
you're
a lot. Yeah.
or worse,
Yeah.
which is terrifying.
Yeah.
And so for you to be like, yo, I'm in Kauai with my 2.5-year-old
Hmm.
and I'm enjoying coconut water at midday.
And
And
I actually really love who I am.
yeah,
I mean, I'm telling you, I never thought that was going to happen. I never thought I would love who I was. I never thought that I would feel comfortable in my body. I never thought I'd be able to speak, like, especially my truth, because my truth has been like an atomic bomb for not just my own life, but like a lot of people's lives. So, I mean, there's so many gifts I've been given by following the thread. So many gifts. And that's why it's so worth it to not just stay stuck or in your comfort zone or like, it's so worth it to keep asking why and to keep like searching and reading the books and having the experiences that you feel drawn to, whether that's like mushrooms or therapy or somatic healing or breath work or whatever it is,
yeah,
that
they're
you
all tools.
called to do, like go in that direction
Yeah,
and trust yourself.
absolutely.
You can't make a mistake. There's no wrong move.
Hmm,
So,
that's really nice. Yeah, we were talking about like being on and off the path like the other day, and it reminded me of, there's a Ram Dass lecture where, like, you know, when he came back from India, he was like, he called himself like the uncle of the counterculture. You know, he was like a little older than the
mm,
kids, but he was like still, you know, he was like a teacher of them. And that he was in the wearing white and beads era too. And he kind of helped start that. And he was like, years later, I ran, you know, this is like late 80s. He's telling the story looking back. And he was like, years later, I ran into this guy who was big in the kirtan scene, and then but he was in the bar drinking and had left it, and he was just like, I fell off the path, you know, and all stuff. And he's like, that's impossible.
you're still on a
You're on,
path.
this is the path right now that you're on tonight talking to me, you know. It's like,
That's
isn't that
right.
beautiful? You know, it's like there's this opening and closing and peak and valley, and like we're all on the carousel.
Right. Well, and that's one of the things that I do appreciate when I look back on my life so far is how many things, how many different versions of myself I've experienced. I allowed myself to experience. I
Hmm.
gave myself permission to be to be the punk rocker. And then I was kind of like a hippie for a while. And then I gave myself permission to be the total like I was hanging with Satanists in LA, like playing like drone music,
Good.
for a year. Um,
How are they doing?
I love them. I still love them so much. We all love each other. They're like, Kayla,
Yeah.
you so don't belong here. And also you're so part of our family forever. I'm like, I love you guys.
I
We still talk. I think they're all living
love
in
you
like,
guys. Hill Satan. I'll see y'all around.
I love them. They're amazing.
Yeah, there's some funny
Um,
Satanists. Not my
yeah.
not my crew, but
Not yeah.
we're all one anyway.
Generally
Yeah.
speaking, they're not my crew. And
Yeah, yeah.
they were actually, it's interesting because the first group of people I was ever friends with and kind of like brought in a very loving, genuinely loving way, was this group of friends down in LA who, after I got divorced from my first husband, uh, they, I became like besties with this guy named Evan. And I moved down there with him and his family, and he was super just like he is incredibly intelligent, like top of his class, Ivy League school. Like he's just like super smart. And I was always so shy, like thinking that I was not intelligent. I didn't go to school. I didn't graduate college. Like I didn't do I'm not book smart at all. Not at all. So I always thought like, yeah, I'm not really very smart. And he really saw me. It was the first person that really saw me and was like, dude,
That's a
you're like
full
that kind
story.
of full brain, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. That's awesome.
And so, yeah, it was so great. He was just like such a beautiful angel in my life. But it was very, very deep, deep dark, and I needed to be in that for a little while, you know.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
weren't like full on worshiping Satan, but
Yeah.
it was a vibe, right? It's kind of a vibe.
Well, there's like a funny like Twitter account that like trolls a lot of Christian stuff, but it's like has some wholesome stuff, and it's like I'm sure there's like dark of that scene that I don't care to be near, but
Yeah.
it's mostly like the guys on Twitter are kind of funny, but yeah, no, it's like it's quite the story, and my main question is like when's it going to be on HBO, because it's just quite the narrative of your life. And now you're in Kauai. You are doing right. You are doing some writing. What's your day job, or like what's your practice? What's the end of 24, beginning of 25 look like?
Well, I'm going to Brazil actually for a
Oh, you
couple
get it.
months. Yeah, a
Okay.
few months we're gonna go visit some family over there.
Nice.
Yeah, Manuel's dad is from Brazil. So we're gonna go visit his parents and just take a little cruise time.
Fun.
And I'm gonna be able to really have a lot of support there. We're kind of like on, in an island over here
You're
with
on
not a
your
lot of
little
like
island, literally.
we're literally on a little tiny island, so there's not a lot of support. And there's also like I didn't even realize this, but it takes about 2 years of being on a waiting list to get your kid into a school here.
Wow.
Yeah, the waiting lists are insane. So it's been hard for me to find support. So I'm gonna go over there and have a ton of time to really like focus on what I want to build.
Good for
And
you.
yeah, really focus on my writing and my offerings and yeah, just getting out and speaking more and sharing more. Um, but yeah, and then I'm a massage therapist, so I do that.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah.
That's a healing modality for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And then we're
There's
doing
an
a lot of
energy.
lots of friends here and I are doing we have a few really cool retreats that we're in the process of planning. So
Amazing.
I've been doing a lot of retreat coordination and that kind of thing for many years. So
It's like it's a very like we just getting started.
yeah,
Like look out, because you have you're emerging. You're Orpheus emerging from Hades.
yeah,
With the lantern going, okay,
yeah,
it's daytime out here actually. Wow.
yeah. It's been interesting, right? Because it's like there's been I've always known that I was gonna in some way really like get out in more of a public view. And the time just hasn't been until now for me to do that because it was really just like I need to shine my light in my own life and my
Yeah.
community and just live for a minute. Like just live
Yeah.
and focus on myself and yeah. So
Yeah, there's a few people in my life right now that are kind of monk mode. You
yeah,
know, I'm kind of not right now, and that's okay. I have been before. I'll be back monk mode. I love you.
yeah,
I
so
really, I
good.
really like the idea of a beach. My dad wrote a novel, like at a beach cabin. Like he would like take 6 weeks, and like it's like that sounds like a fucking dream. Like that's what my next few years are gonna be, is like going to a thing and like writing, or like going to a thing and meditating, or having that intensive. Right now I'm like in the thick of it, and it's beautiful and crazy, and but anyway, I think it's really you've gone through the process yourself. You've like had this intense trauma. You've had this intense contemplation and healing, and thrilled to be a cheerleader.
Thank you.
It's so effortless. It's the
Yeah,
easiest thing in the world.
I'm your cheerleader too.
Thank
I love
you.
how I really love the intellectual meets heart that you carry. And
Thank you.
that's one of the things that really I could feel in your work was just your heart was in it. So yeah, it's good stuff.
Much appreciation to you, Kayla, and come back and see us.
Yeah, anytime.
And you're stuck with me, and
Yay. Aw,
I really appreciate you, and
thanks for adopting me.
gonna keep megaphoning.
Yay.
Thank
You're
you
the
for
best.
sharing.
Thank
Wish
you
you the
so
best.
much. All right, we'll talk more.
Namaste. Let's talk soon.
Okay, sounds good.
Alrighty.
All right.
Thank you.